Hi, I'm Erik Linask from Technology Marketing Corporation, coming to you from the TMC newsroom, and I'm here with Ingate's President Steve Johnson, and we're here to introduce you today to a new series featuring the Ingate Knowledge Base. It's going to be a series of videos talking about SIP, about all things SIP, which of course is Session Initiation Protocol, the language that's being used by companies today that are developing VoIP-based products and solutions and applications. We're going to talk about things like those applications, about security, about SIP trunking, and a whole range of other topics, all designed to bring you information in an easy to understand and digest format with weekly videos. I'd like to turn your attention now to Steve Johnson, as I said, from Ingate Systems, who will start us off with Ingate's Knowledge Base Series number 1. What is SIP Protocol? Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Erik. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, I know that our viewership knows a lot about SIP already, but I'm sure there are plenty of folks out there who still have questions as to what SIP, Session Initiation Protocol, actually is, why we use it, the things that we can do with it. Can you shed some light on that for them?
Absolutely. This is the reason that we started these knowledge-based sessions and our companion series, an email offering every week on SIP, to give people the digested version of what SIP is as a protocol and what its benefits are to companies who are adopting new ways of communications. SIP is a signaling protocol. For those of you who are familiar with the stack of protocols in the OSI or the Internet world, it's an application layer protocol that arranges the signaling between two endpoints, that defines how signaling enables the creation, the modification, the transfer, and other things which happen in sessions, whether they're voice or video or other types of sessions, between two endpoints for a communication session to actually take place. It is actually not related to the media or the words, the audio or the video that is actually communicated, but it's really the protocol that sets all of that up. It is actually a protocol that was designed by the Internet Engineering Task Force, or IETF, starting about 10 or 12 years ago. And it was designed to improve what was then the nascent ability to do voice over Internet protocol and to bring that into the mainstream. Because it was designed by the IETF, it does very nicely complement all of the other protocols that we have become used to using over the Internet. Those things like SMTP for email over the Internet, which is today very pervasive, as well as HTTP for websites and so forth. All of these things are very compatible with SIP, and therefore it works very nicely and very synergistically with these applications. So SIP is the new way of communicating. It's the new way of setting up communications, whether it's voice over IP or video or other types of things that people are doing. Ingate is very happy to be a part of this whole new way of communications, and in the future sessions we hope to introduce people to many of the various topics that are on their minds and begging for answers today.
Thanks, Steve. That's a great introduction to SIP. I'm sure there are a couple of terms that people hear a lot and maybe wondering about are things like proxy servers and registration. What are those?
Well, in order for all of this to work, there needs to be a way for the clients, the phones, if you will, to actually identify themselves and for some device to know where they are and who they're associated with so that I can get in touch with you. That is the job of a registration server. So when I register a client, I need to register to a server that will keep track of what IP address my client is associated with, and therefore the calls can be routed to me as opposed to someone else. The other thing is a proxy server, and basically this is now called an application server perhaps, which actually contains the capabilities of actually managing the media. So the application server would have things on it like voicemail and those kinds of things, but it will also have the intelligence to be able to do the routing, to be able to do transfers and manage the sessions so that people can do with it what they wish. Those are the two major things. We often talk about this application server in the enterprise space as an Internet Protocol PBX, or Private Branch Exchange, and it replaces the older versions of those that we were all familiar with. And the registration server is always, or most often, a part of that device, actually. In the network, there are other systems that do similar things, but on a network basis, and all of it gets glued together with a session border controller similar to that which Ingate produces.
Excellent. Now, when you talk about call routing, excuse me, what role does SIP have in the routing?
SIP is the underlying protocol that makes the routing work. It basically defines the messaging that gets embedded in the header information that is delivered along with the SIP packets, that says to the servers involved what is supposed to happen with this call, starting with the simplest thing, which is I dial a number, or I input your address into my phone, and it decides how to route that call to reach you in the best way. And all of that is accomplished because SIP has the rules, and it has the messaging that is actually understood by all of the elements in the path that can make all of these things work.
Good. So I guess what you're saying is that the SIP routing is done, it happens at the application layer, right?
Yes.
But doesn't routing typically need to happen at the transport layer?
Yes, it does, and that's one of the things that we as a company resolve for people, because at the transport layer we are actually using, in most of our companies, or all of our companies I should say, something called network address translation. Because we have so few IP addresses available in relative terms compared to the total number of devices that are on all of the networks in the world, we have something called IPv4, Internet Protocol version 4, which basically takes a publicly routable address that can be routed on the public internet and converts that to a private IP addressing scheme so that we can multiply the number of addresses truly available. That creates a problem, I should say, because I can't route to you directly because I don't know your private IP address, and it's basically hidden by the firewall in front of your network. So the Ingate product, the Enterprise Session Border Controller, which we call the Separator, resolves that problem by keeping track of where you are on that private IP address scheme and rewriting the header information so that we can find you on the inside of your network.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
We've been chatting with Steve Johnson, president of Ingate Systems. Hope you've enjoyed this first session of Ingate's Knowledge Base web series. Join us next week, where our session will discuss one of the hottest topics in IP communications today, SIP trunking. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
For more information, go to www.ingate.com. Scroll over the Resources tab and select White Papers. From this location, you could download a number of informative documents to learn more about SIP.